Hi, my friend. This is Matt Finch, and welcome to Evolved Sun. In today's episode, you're going to be learning about psychic attack, psychic greeting, psychic resistance, and psychic protection, including how to discern the difference between psychic resistance and a psychic greeting or attack, how to not beat yourself up if you keep getting psychic greetings or psychic resistance or psychic attacks, how to reduce them, and how to bounce back from them and return to an open heart and a high state of consciousness, and much more. This is one of my favorite topics, and I think nowadays it's more and more relevant than ever before, especially for wanderers, starseeds, and elder souls that have gone through spiritual awakening or that are beginning to awaken and do service to others work in polarity and consciousness. And I'm going to be using today as a resource, Living the Law of One 101, The Choice, by Carla Rueckert of LL Research, specifically from a section in Chapter 11 called Advanced Lighthouse Level Work, the sections on psychic greeting and psychic protection. There are some awesome quotes from Ra and Quo as well. So this will be me channeling the spirit consciousness soul of Carla Rueckert through her words, articulating the Confederation's philosophy and descriptions of psychic greeting, psychic resistance, psychic attack, and psychic protection. I hope you get a lot of value on this. And with that being said, let's get right into it. Psychic greeting. Psychic greetings are those greetings which have been sent by an entity, most usually of the inner planes, with the intention of disrupting the process of spiritual evolution and causing an entity to stop its forward progress and to become lost in the side roads of inner questioning and suffering. Under this definition, you may see that psychic greeting is a term that is much overused and often misused among your peoples. However, if one pulls one's focus back into looking at what your energetic bodies are and how they experience you and your thinking processes, the concept of psychic greeting may be perhaps redefined as psychic resistance and may be widened to include a wide variety of ways in which your energetic body can experience resistance. Quo. Psychic greeting is the inevitable response of the negatively polarized entities from unseen planes to a player's waking up and beginning to polarize. When a player begins to polarize towards service to others, he begins to act as a source of light. Just as moths are attracted to a flame, this light attracts those service to self energies that would extinguish that beacon of light by terminating or conquering it. You may be more familiar with the term psychic attack than with the term psychic greeting. The Confederation prefers the term psychic greeting. This term emphasizes the fact that negative entities are not viciously attacking the positive entity, but are systematically offering it chances to be swayed from the positive path. The greeting may feel like a furious attack. However, the intelligence behind such psychic greetings is cold, logical, and persistent rather than impulsive and hot-headed. Such negative entities watch for chinks in each person's armor of light. Then they energize those chinks. When people think of psychic greeting, it is always assumed that it is coming from outside the self. However, the Confederation says that most so-called psychic greetings are actually instances of psychic resistance coming from within the player's own personality. When a player begins to polarize successfully towards the positive, changes begin occurring within his energy body. These changes demand that he release his old definition of himself as a wounded person. Most old definitions of the self involve remembered pain. There are many pockets of ancient pain in us all. This old pain must be processed, balanced, released, and left behind. Quo says, there are many ways in which embedded pain can find an echo, a reflection, or a voice within the present moment. And some of the voices speaking to the energetic body will be those of a negative tone of voice, and that negativity will be cunningly and specifically crafted to fit into the present moment and to cause the experience of distraction or resistance. This is why finding and releasing embedded pockets of pain in the memory is such central work for the player. Such pockets of pain offer easy targets for agents of psychic resistance within the energy body and personality, as well as those outside of the self. Some psychic greetings do indeed come from a separate personality, which has an existence independent of the player's. Usually, these greetings occur because the player has begun accessing the gateway to offer gifts, such as pure radiance of being, channeling, or healing. Psychic greeting is a left-handed compliment. If you are receiving a greeting, you know you are on the right track. You are polarizing well and standing close enough to the light to cast a sharp and noticeable shadow. It is extremely rare that a 5th density, negatively oriented entity offers a psychic greeting to a player within incarnation on Earth. Normally, a 5th density, negative entity will send his 4th density student to offer greetings. The most usual greeting is some form of temptation. In terms of polarity, each of our personalities have some weak spots. The usual weak spots are the earthly vices of gluttony, laziness, jealousy, anger, and fear. Fear has many forms. For instance, that others may think ill of us, that we may lose our identity, or that we may lose material comforts. Players can be easily distracted from the program of positive spiritual evolution by these and other things. The result is that the player temporarily halts his progress in polarization. He has been taken off the game board until he regains his balance, recalls his intentions, and becomes fearless once more. Occasionally, the form of psychic greeting may be physical. A player whose mind is fixed on staying positive and is therefore not vulnerable to emotional temptations, but who has a weak physical body, may experience unusual amounts of illness. While lighthouse-level players are the most likely to receive psychic greetings, any player who chooses to awaken from the planetary dream and to polarize positively will experience them at some level. As the player begins to meditate, pray, and otherwise use the gateway to intelligent infinity, he will begin to experience this psychic resistance and greeting. And if he should decide to come to a place such as LL Research, where a well-established source of light and love has been developed, he may well find himself experiencing a lot of resistance to getting there. We have had many stories about difficulties experienced by participants coming to our gatherings. Canceled flights, car breakdowns, sudden home emergencies, and so forth. Players can expect to experience psychic greeting and psychic resistance as they work to increase their polarization and consciousness. It is part of the game board environment. It can be dealt with successfully by any player, and it is nothing to fear. Psychic protection. We commend your continual fidelity to the ideals of harmony and thanksgiving. This shall be your great protection. Ra. Receiving a psychic greeting can feel frightening. Nightmares, a common source of psychic greetings, are scary things. Uninvited thoughts that come forcibly and repeatedly to mind are another very common type of negative greeting. Nameless dread with no content is also a common type of greeting. These can feel very spooky and can tend to immobilize the player. The immediate knee-jerk reaction when such greetings occur is to contract in fear and throw up one's emotional armor. However, as is often the case with metaphysical choices, the immediate response is not the player's most skillful choice. If we respond to psychic greetings with fear, the greeting has been successful. We have stopped our forward momentum, closed our hearts, and dropped off the game board. It takes practice for the player to refrain from that withdrawal from the open heart and, instead, respond to perceived greetings with fearless serenity. At first, it will require attention and practice to respond without fear. The player will need to remind himself consciously to respond fearlessly. The game will be to perceive the psychic greeting as soon as possible and keep the downtime away from the open heart as short as possible. Gradually, the player will gain skill at perceiving such greetings and will lose less and less time having to reopen the heart. There are a couple of resources for the player undergoing psychic greeting that are quick and easy and very helpful. One resource is the focused use of your breath. Breath is sacred. Using your breath intentionally to create changes in your consciousness is magical. Have a mantra or phrase ready to use when psychic greeting is perceived. One of my favorites is Julian of Norwich's phrase, "All is well and all will be well." This saying is a part of a paragraph, the whole of which is helpful for the player to get into his conscious awareness for reference in times of psychic greeting. She says, "Jesus in this vision informed me of all that is needful to me. He said, 'Sin is unavoidable, but all shall be well, and all shall be well, and all manner of things shall be well. For if we never fell, we should not know how feeble we are of ourself, and also we should not fully know that marvelous love of our Maker.' He did not say, 'You will never have a rough passage, you will never be overstrained, you will never feel uncomfortable,' but he did say, 'You will never be overcome.' The fullness of joy is to behold God in everything." The player at the lighthouse level is one who has awakened his magical personality and can create changes in his consciousness at will. Such a phrase as "all is well" is a very quick invocation of a point of view which is fearless and confident. I also use the simple one-word prayer, Jesus. And this works whether or not you are Christian or whether you believe in any religion. Jesus is the inner plane's embodiment of unconditional love. Saying that word brings an immediate change in consciousness. If you wish to access the vibration of Jesus the Christ, but prefer not to use that name when you pray, other Christ names of the New Age are Yeshua, Yehoshua, and Sananda. Another resource for the lighthouse level player is his faculty of logic. Nightmares, waking visions of doom, and nameless dread may be uncomfortable, but they will not harm us. Their goal is simply to scare us and take us off the game board by closing down our hearts. If these prayers, or your own choice of prayerful words, do not immediately remove the greeting, use your logic and change your circumstances. If it was a nightmare from which you awoke in terror, get up, fix a cup of green tea, light a candle, and meditate or read for a while until you feel right again. If it was a waking vision of disturbing content, alter your program for the day enough to include a change in physical place, or, failing that, a different activity. If it is a feeling of dread with no content, then pray or sing a favorite song. Place good content where there was zero content in the mind. Using your breath, and the nameless fear will be chased away. Occasionally, we players will field a particularly persistent greeting. Usually this occurs during the depths of the dark night of the soul experience, or after a difficult outer trauma. Returning war veterans are prey to these persistent greetings due to their having undergone horrible experiences. Those touched by the suicide of a loved one or a difficult separation from a mate by death or divorce are also particularly prone. The loyal opposition likes to get people when they are down and to emphasize the state of disharmony which Julian of Norwich called sin. The Confederation term is distortion. A good synonym is error. Call it what you will, but it is nothing more than an attitude or state of mind which we can find ways to adjust. When your greeting is particularly persistent, roll out the big guns. My favorite resource for persistent greeting is a dedication of the self to the forces of unconditional love, symbolized by the figure of Jesus the Christ. Dion Fortune offers this resource in her excellent little book, Psychic Self-Defense. The text of the prayer is, I am a servant of the Lord Jesus the Christ, whom I serve with all my heart, all my mind, and all my strength. I draw a circle around me in the name of the Christ, across which no mortal error dares to set its foot. Physically draw this circle around yourself as you say the words by touching your hands behind you and then bringing them around to the front and touching them in front of you to draw a circle around your body in the air. When you have finished this prayer, clap your hands together to signify that it is done. I have used this prayer extensively in difficult times and have found it quite useful, even when the most disturbing greetings have hit me, like being unable to breathe or feeling suicidal. Prayer seems to wear off in a few hours, and therefore it may need to be repeated. Say it again, just as you would repeat a dose of medicine. You cannot overdose, and you need no prescription. If this process seems to take you away from your good work for a while, do not begrudge the time taken to move back into the open heart. It is far more important, metaphysically speaking, for the player to return to the consciousness of the open heart than for him to be especially efficient in his work that day. Impatience, anger, or other negative reactions to having to do this work only keep the self out of the heart. So players need to be calm, serene, and without undue haste in dealing with perceived greetings from negative forces. Address what Ra called the chink in the armor of light with love, and love will prevail. All right, so there you have it. Now you've learned quite a bit about the topics of psychic greeting and psychic attack, psychic resistance, how to discern the difference between them, and how to use psychic protection and much more. I've had all sorts of different psychic greetings, from nightmares to suicidal ideation to even physical things, such as when I tried to start this Evolved Sun spiritual YouTube channel. I would run into all these very atypical problems, either with my computer or editing software or something else. And even when there have been really important videos that I've gone to make that are things about Orion, service to self, elites, reptilian, aliens, etc., there have been just such totally apparent psychic greetings in the form of failing technology. And I just have to laugh at it. I much prefer that to like things like nightmares or suicidal ideation or that feeling of dread, doom and gloom that Carla was talking about. I've experienced all those, and since you're watching this video, I'm pretty sure that you probably have too. In fact, I would love for you to share an example of a psychic greeting or attack or resistance from your life. If you post that in the comments below, I would love to read them. And that concludes this episode, my friend. Thank you so much for watching. Take good care of yourself. Subscribe if you have not already. Give this video a like if you want to help me boost the visibility of it. And I'll see you on the next episode.